接下来我们转换一下频道，我们刚才连续2个讲者都是谈 social， 我们现在来谈谈今天也重复出现好几次的叫 logistics 啊，或是我们讲说叫物流。其实我目前为止听到2种截然不同的看法。早上的不管是 Zalora 或是 Lazada 哈，他们都强调，因为要创造美好的使用者体验，他们要紧紧的控制自己的物流。好，他们甚至有自己的物流团队啊等等的啊。那但是很有趣的，刚才 Garena 也就是做虾皮的 CEO 上来说，他告诉我们，他不要做物流，因为他要做轻资产的电商，哈，所以他只做这个平台。至于物流这些东西，全部交给别人，他不碰递送团队，他也不碰仓储这些事情，哈。所以到底物流是一个怎么样的一回事呢？我想接下来一位讲者，他们就是专门做物流的，他可以从他的专业来跟我们分享。我讲的物流很讽刺啊，他自己是做物流的，但昨天他这个人要来台湾，其实经历了千辛万苦啊。他base在香港，昨天他要来，他去了4次机场，好，然后每一次都告诉他说，我们待会带人飞，好，后来就不飞了，这样哈。所以他总共花了12个小时在香港机场。我猜他坐船都已经到了，可是他没有办法从机场来。不过经过12小时的千辛万苦，他总算来了，我们也非常非常荣幸哦。他是 Managing Director International Lalamove 啊，拉拉快送，今天来到现场。Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Blake Larson. 来 Blake， 好 ，Blake 需要一点时间戴他的耳机。好 ，Thank you. You're ready. Great, terrific. Thank you, Blake. Thank you for waiting for 12 hours for this. Are we ready? You want to use my hand mic? OK， 那这个还没有 ready， 我们就用 hand mic 好。Once again, Mr. Blake Larson.
Thank you. I was laughing because recently I was in Iceland on holiday, and it took me about 18 hours to get there to fly through Europe. It took me 24 hours to get from Hong Kong to Taipei today. So just to put it in perspective. So, hold on. So what I've noticed actually talking to a lot of people here today and listening to them is that we all recognize the impact that mobile internet is having on the world and how it's changing things. And so we started in 2013 looking at how mobile internet was really changing the efficiency of mobile assets. This was about the time that Uber was taking off. It was the time that Grab Taxi was growing dramatically in Southeast Asia, and when Didi and Kuaidi were making their mark in China. So we looked at the space and we said, man, mobile internet is changing our world right in front of us, but we don't want to compete with them. So what space can we look at to really make a difference similar to what they did? So we started looking at the logistics space, particularly delivery. So as we started digging a little bit deeper, we noticed there were some major problems, some major flaws with how delivery was being done in Asia today, particularly last mile. We found for small businesses, which make up 98% of businesses in Asia, that it's very, very expensive to invest in vehicles, to manage drivers. They'd rather be investing in their own inventory, their own assets. When they did find freelancers, which make up the majority of last mile delivery, they were very, very hard to manage. You know, just because you own a flower shop or a small retail shop doesn't mean you know how to manage delivery drivers, schedule them, do all the routing and all of this. So there was a lot of unreliability in the system. And then your other option is to outsource. You can go to Shengfeng, DHL, local courier, but none of those are optimized to do delivery fast. So if you were a flower shop and you got an order at 10 a.m. and you wanted it out by 2 p.m. and you didn't have your own delivery men, or if your delivery men were already out for the day, you had to tell your customer, please wait. Well, we found this highly, highly inefficient. So we even looked back a little bit further and we said, all right, there's a huge opportunity, we believe, in doing last mile intracity delivery. But let's step back and make sure that we can actually shift the paradigm, not just incrementally make delivery better, but really shift how delivery is done throughout Asia. And so we looked at the market and we said, is this really big enough for us to make a difference? Well, if you look at logistics as a percentage of GDP, it's somewhere between 10 and 20% of a country's average of the GDP. And you also find that last mile delivery is the most expensive leg of that logistics cost. And sometimes that delivery cost can make up to 20 to 25% of the total cost of the product. So imagine that you're paying $20 for something, and you actually pay 25% extra just to get it delivered. And then we said, well, okay, the market's big, we know it's big, everybody delivers something, a document, a passport, an e-commerce parcel, you go to IKEA, you need something brought home. But can we do something really, really better? Is there really an opportunity here? And we said, well, let's look at it from the driver's side, right? All of these freelance drivers, there's millions of them. In China alone, there's 10 million vans that are doing delivery. But you know what we found that these drivers were doing? They were doing 2 deliveries a day, working 10 hours a day to maybe get 2 deliveries. The rest of the time, they're smoking, gambling, hanging out with their friends. It's a very, very inefficient system. And so we also looked at the customer side and said, well, what can we make better? So here the customers are doing all of these management, spreadsheets, faxes, all of this trouble that's not core to their business. And we said, can we do this faster? And so where traditional companies were saying, sure, we'll do your delivery. It'll arrive in 2 days, 2 weeks maybe. We started talking about, well, what if we could do it in minutes? Not even days, not even hours, in minutes. So this is where Lalamove was born, bringing this entire ecosystem of parties together. These small businesses is where we started, putting them all on one platform, putting these hundreds of thousands of drivers in Asia, bringing them together, providing transparency to the system that never had it before. So Uber did it, Grab did it, Kuaidi did it, and now we're doing it for delivery. So what do we really offer? So when we say we do delivery fast, I mean really, 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 really fast. Our average time of delivery, from the time somebody says, I need something delivered, to the time it's dropped off to the customer, not picked up, dropped off, it's 46 minutes. Can you imagine doing anything in Bangkok in 46 minutes? It's affordable. So no, we're not as cheap as, I don't know, Sing Post or Hong Kong Post if you want your package in 3 or 4 days. But compared to the delivery couriers that can do it maybe next day or maybe even later that day, maybe 6 hours later, we're typically 40 to 60% cheaper for on-demand delivery. We make it super simple. We don't want you filling out Excel sheets, faxes, making 10, 20 phone calls just to get one thing delivered, figuring out where your parcel is. So we use technology to really bridge this gap. And then we've created an ecosystem to support all of this. We make it really, really reliable. So before you used to hand your package to someone, it disappears, and you don't know if it shows up. So we did all of the things you can with technology to help with tracking. We've put in the rating system to actually incentivize these drivers to perform better. If you're an employed driver by a company, you have no incentive to perform better. But we actually reward our drivers that perform better, that get higher scores, and give them more orders so they can make more income. So we empower them to change their lives. So we started off in Hong Kong, little Hong Kong, 7.5 million people. And we started in August of 2013, and we hired one developer to start the platform, and we had one interview question from him. So we said, actually we had 2. We said, here's Uber. Can you build this for delivery? If he said yes, we hired him. We said, can you do it in 2 months? If he said yes, we gave him a bonus. He did it in 10 weeks, not quite 2 months, 10 weeks. So in December of 2013, we launched in Hong Kong and saw tremendous traction. So almost immediately, we were looking for growth. So in 2014, we opened Singapore as our second market about 6 months later, followed by Thailand and then China in November and December of 2014. And then in 2015, we opened Taipei shortly after, and then a bunch more cities in China. 2016, we scaled very, very quickly in China. We're going to open in another city in Southeast Asia next month. So now we're up to 29 cities in 3 years and growing very, very quickly. So here are the results, right? At the beginning, trying to find product market fit, maybe it was a little bit slower, but then come Q1 this year, Q2 this year, we found like the magic sauce, the thing that really, really worked. And I'll get into that in a minute. But we're up to 350 employees across China and Southeast Asia. We're going to do over 1.2 million deliveries this quarter. We're growing 30% month on month without increasing our cash burn. So our cash burn is actually going down, even though we're growing and opening about 3 to 4 new cities a month. And we actually just turned our first 2 cities profitable in China, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, in the last 2 months as well. So the question is how we do it. Obviously from that growth chart, it wasn't immediate. It came over time, but we learned a lot through the process. So hopefully me sharing some of these things will provide some insight to actually building a business across China and Southeast Asia at the same time. I would say that's one of the things that makes us quite unique. So one of the things that was really important for us up front, right, is to build a sustainable model. So I would say that the typical perception is if you go into China, you just are going to burn money. Just spend, spend, spend to get market share. That's what Alibaba did, right? So everybody not everyone, but a lot of people follow the Alibaba model. They beat eBay because they didn't charge anybody for 6 years. Same thing, you see the battles in Southeast Asia for the taxi space, right? So there used to be Easy Taxi, they're out now. Grab out, fundraise them. Uber's there, they're both spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year to buy market share. Well, we didn't want to get into this race, so we wanted to build a sustainable model, and we thought there was a few key things to building that sustainable model. The first is, we said, if we're going to go into logistics where there's these huge companies already doing it, they've been doing it for decades, what can we do better that they can't do? And we said fast delivery was the one thing that they can't do. Third-party logistics companies like DHL, Shengfeng are not optimized to do fast delivery because they're very, very capital intensive, and their whole system is based on optimizing that capacity, which necessitates them to do delivery over multiple days. So we really wanted to create something that a customer could experience immediately. So normally when you're like, hey, I want my e-commerce, I want my new t-shirt, and you had to wait 3-4 days, you get very, very excited, but then maybe it's a week or even longer. We said, well, if a business partners with us, we can deliver it to them in an hour. That's something somebody can touch and feel immediately. And consequently, our referral, our new users, is about 65% of our new users come from referral. We also knew that we were creating a system that the larger the volume got, the better the unit economics got. The higher the orders came in, the higher the density, the lower the cost of delivery, which could be passed on to the customers or taken by us as additional gross profit. And then lastly, we decided not to go down the consumer route. Customer acquisition cost is very, very expensive on the consumer side. So if you aren't able to grow very, very quickly, it's a very tough business. So we very quickly focused on small businesses because they had the biggest pain point, and we're seeing the highest or higher lifetime value and lower acquisition costs as a result. So one of the things we make a huge focus on in our company is really how do we make the lives of our customers easier? So if you look at the left, that's a simplified version of a supply chain, right? Look at how many different people are involved, how many different steps, consequently how many different middlemen. That means that there's a lot of people touching the item or the good along the way that aren't necessarily creating a lot of value, so delivery costs go very, very high. So when we look at delivery and we say, how do we please our customers? How do we get from the manufacturer or the retailer to the customer as quickly as possible? Because we know it's going to be a better experience and it's going to save money. And then something we learned along the way, we just started with a mobile app, right? Started with Android, iOS. I think this is pretty typical, both on the user and the driver side. But we quickly took the feedback of our customers and said, hey, who wants to place 100 orders a day via their app, right? I mean, Very, very painful to sit there and key that in over and over again. So we built a web app. So, the people at their desk at the office every day could put in the order details. It's much, much more convenient for them. Then we started working with some partners and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if in our retail store, instead of actually making somebody have to download it, what if you just had a tablet, a kiosk there, and then the customer could easily put in the details of the delivery, and they could deliver home maybe their furniture at that moment. So we built that. And then recently, we actually just created a private API, which will soon be an open API, which will allow customers to do thousands of deliveries a day without ever touching one button. So we're really, really focusing on making their lives easier. So we know that though we're a logistics company, the way that we're different is we have to embrace technology to really leverage scale. We say that only about 10% of our customers' experience is actually online. So 90% is still offline, right? It's still somebody, picking a good from the shelf, handing it to the delivery driver, it disappears and ends up somewhere, knock on a door, and there it is. But in order for that to work really, really well, you need a really good technology streamlining that process. So here are a couple things that we've done, and you can kind of see. One is actually mapping out our supply side. Here on the left, that's Bangkok. This is a little bit old, but we can see all of our drivers in real time. So we can optimize where our supply is to basically balance out the demand side. Same thing on the right side. You see the heat map for the demand side. So we know where our orders are, we know where our customers are, we can anticipate all of this. So this continually brings efficiency to the system. And then one other side note I want to make is one thing that I think we did, I don't know if it was lucky or good early on, is we actually split our technology between Southeast Asia and China. So our systems are completely separate, they don't touch each other, and this has allowed us to scale China very, very efficiently. Because even just building for Hong Kong and trying to use that technology in China would have slowed us down dramatically. So this is why we're able to open 2, 3, 4, 5 cities a month in China. So the other thing that really helped us grow along the way is we were really focused on these SMEs, and the SMEs started talking to each other, and then they started shopping at the different places. And then we maybe got lucky, we had a few connections, and we started talking to some of the bigger companies. So we actually worked with Google last year in Hong Kong as they were launching their new line of Nexus devices. So we partnered with them and their warehouse partner. We integrated all of our systems, and we actually delivered the first Nexus 6P in the world last year with Google. And so that was quite an interesting project. But that also brought on other big partners. We have a kiosk with IKEA in Singapore. We work with them in a few different markets. It's been a very, very good partner. And then most recently, and something we're super excited about, is we're working with Line in Thailand. So Line recently created a whole new app called Line Man. They've got 10 million users in Bangkok. They do convenient goods like 7-Eleven delivery. They do food delivery and document delivery. So we partnered with them, knowing their marketing muscle, their user base, and we do all of the delivery for them as part of this new app in Thailand. So just to kind of benchmark how fast it's growing because of the user base and the partnership, Foodpanda has been in Bangkok since 2012. In less than 4 months, we are bigger than Foodpanda with this partnership with Line. So people often ask, well, what's next? And I think, like the last speaker, we don't always know what's next. We always can think of what's next. We can listen to our users. What do we do? How do we really change the paradigm? How do we keep making the system more efficient? Because ultimately, logistics is not that sexy. So how do we really add value to our businesses that are using us? So if you look at this chart here, we kind of do the left side pretty well today. We do intracity. We just focus on within Taipei, New Taipei City. We don't go to any of the cities outside of there. For example, we do a lot of point-to-point. Actually, most of our deliveries are last minute. People are in a hurry, they're in an emergency. And we do that very, very well. That's about 85% of our deliveries. And we do it on demand better than anybody. So we actually can do a fulfillment rate that is higher than a traditional logistics company, but we do it on demand. So for those of you who've tried the taxi apps, I can guarantee that our on-demand fulfillment is higher than theirs. But what's next? The cool stuff in this space is I feel like we're just at the beginning. Inner city. So what would it look like to go from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, maybe? What would it look like to do real-time distribution? So we did a little bit of a pilot with Google before. How do we drop the costs, right? So right now we're still more expensive than mail delivery, maybe next day. But actually the technology that we're working on right now has the ability to do a 3-hour delivery at the same cost that you could do 2-day delivery with the traditional guys. And that goes into the same day delivery there. And then the other thing that we haven't touched yet at all is what's the cross-border opportunity look like? I think we got a lot of good data, especially from Garena early on, is like this is becoming an ecosystem. And right now, SEA is very, very fragmented, right? Different languages, different financial institutions, different regulations. But how this is all shrinking, the world is shrinking, and how can we play a part in that cross-border? And then I would say the last part is like, how do we do pooling better? So where you really change an industry in the paradigm is where you get rid of all of the physical assets, the billions and billions of dollars that traditional companies have invested in their own ecosystem, the warehouses, the distribution centers, the sorting centers, the employees. Some of the things we're looking at is actually getting rid of all of that and being just as efficient. So how do you do real-time pooling so the drivers never have to go to these distribution spots? So they can go from one customer to the next customer to the next customer. They do a drop-off, pickup, back and forth, where their time is fully optimized. Right now, about 65% of a driver's time is idle. They're just sitting there, and about 50% of their capacity is empty. So that's a huge, huge opportunity for us to change the face of how delivery is done. And then lastly, I mean, we talk about expansion, right? 29 cities today, that's after 3 years. So based on some of the metrics we've looked at, Asia offers a huge opportunity, and I don't know if you can see it behind the stand, but there's about 226 cities between China, SEA, East Asia, Oceania, that lend itself to a model like ours. So I feel like we're just at the beginning of really revolutionizing how delivery is done, how we work with businesses and change the face of commerce in Asia. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Much, Blake. Well, take a break. We'll invite you back to stage for the panel discussion in a minute. 好，我们谢谢 Blake 哈。其实今天我们复习了很多商业或是创业一些基本的课程啊。早上某某的林总教我们去看成本结构，那后来智冠的 Michael 告诉我们从9宫格中去找出产业中最具吸引人的片块，以及我们自己的专长，找到那个交集。现在 Blake 其实在做同样的事哈。刚才他的故事展现出一个非常典型的一个创业的模型，先找出问题在哪里。快送很贵，很难管理，既有的提供者包括顺丰啊，包括 DHL， 他没有 optimize， 没有进入最佳状况。于是他看到了这个市场是不是进入呢？哇，这个市场非常非常大，科技带来了更好的 solution。接着他就进入了这个市场，进入这个市场之后，他当然要提供更好的 solution。所以你看到他们希望自己能做得比别人快。好，他们希望自己能够 optimize 好等等的。当然，在这样的情况之下，他就要做一些抉择。好，刚才 Blake 有提到他们成功的一点是，除了做得比别人快之外，他们非常 focus 在 business 这个区块，他们不去做 B to C 的事情，因为你要能够拿到新的 consumer 的客户，那是非常非常难，价格非常非常高的一件，所以他们专门做 business， 他们做 B to B。那 B to B 的量做大，就可以把 price 给压低啊，进一步让他们的客户能够越积越多。好，所以刚才 Lalamove 的故事是一个非常典型的创业的故事，从 problem 一直到 solution。好，未来大家可以看到他们会走向更多的地方，比如说让这个运送的卡车可以怎么样的及时的做 pooling， 不用再回到这个发货中心再重新的载货。好。